Okay, we are recording. So thank you everybody for joining us. We've done a couple of these and we're going to try to do at least once a month, do a little education series here. Today we've got Jennifer Morgan Smith that's going to present for us on, actually it's a presentation she did last week for kind of the college age kids. Some of you may have been on that for SUU. And she's going to kind of repeat it for us this week, but we're doing it more on a high school level students. And we want you all to participate. So if you have a question, like I said, use the chat portion of the area to ask a question, or if you want to unmute yourself. I think Jennifer, you're okay with that, right? But we definitely want
okay.
We definitely want some participation and make it a little bit more lively and stuff. So with that, I think we're ready to go. Anybody have any questions before we start? This is where we need yes, no's, comments on the chat.
I've got Lisa and Tony's faces, and so you guys might just, be our ones to check with. So any questions, anybody on the chat, or Lisa, Tony, you guys good?
Okay, go ahead,
I don't
Jennifer.
know. People are frozen, Michael. All right, so you can still see me. You guys are just frozen, so I don't know why. So let me know if you can. But so the title of our presentation today is 2020 Over Yet. And isn't that something that we all want? So let's talk about what we know right now. What we know is that resilience is the ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down, but you still fight. You still move forward. So, and resiliency comes from overcoming difficulties, and we can really grow from overcoming those difficulties. And we know that trauma changes the brain, and it resides in our nervous system, and our emotions, they're stored in, and that's something we really need to be aware of. And relationships and connections can help us overcome trauma and build resiliency. And then we know that one person's trauma is another's growth opportunity, because we all have different abilities and different levels of resiliency. So I'm just finding that everybody is frozen and my computer is working a little slowly, Michael. Can you hear me?
You've been going fine for me.
Okay.
Is everyone else okay? Just kind of put thumbs up or something in the chats. No, everyone's saying.
Okay.
No.
Well, everyone's frozen. Michael, your hand is in the air for me. So, okay, good. All right. So the other thing that we know and that is important to pay attention to is the average size of new homes has increased 1,000 square feet since 1973. We have lots of internet connected devices. We're on screens a lot, like 10 hours a day. There's more TVs and screens in homes than people, and our consumer debt is really high. So as of 2020, we have consumer debt at $14 trillion, and this is a decrease this year of $34 billion, which that's just because people are getting a little stressed and paying off some stuff this last year. And so even before 2020, we were connected 24 hours a day, and we bring our work home on tablets, on smartphones. We're looking at entertainment in all these different ways, and we're checking cell phones. So really, we're talking about all this because we're not as connected as we once were. And this is prior to 2020, right? And so People even are missing important moments in life because they're trying to share them on social channels. And it's not that social media is the problem. It's not that Zoom is the problem. It's not that any of that is the problem. It's what we're doing on them and how much we're using them and how they're impacting other areas of our lives. And even a national survey found that 62% of school-age kids said that their parents are too distracted when the kids try to talk to us. So we then look that teens are now 40% lower in empathy than 3 decades ago. And we know that empathy is an antidote to bullying, to aggression, to prejudice, to racism. So empathy is a really important part of our lives, and it's really important at this point in our history as well. And we know that trend lines of phone use and the increase of depression are increasing at the same rate since 2011. So I also looked through and said, what are kind of the cultural trends and our beliefs individually that we have in this world right now that we're dealing with? So we like to seek connection with other people. We're saddened by loss. We try to avoid loss. We don't like rejection. We really like recognition and attention. We'll do more to avoid pain than we will to seek pleasure. We care what others think of us. We don't like ridicule. We don't like embarrassment. And we like to seek a degree of control in our lives. So these are kind of the standard things that in general, we as humans really like and really want for ourselves. And then our cultural beliefs are that work's your identity. We're comparing, we're competing with one another, we're not playing. Busyness is a badge of honor. When you see people, you're like, okay, how are you doing? Oh, I'm really busy. I've been really busy lately. And we get into this problem solving, solution oriented culture. And then we have a culture of perfectionism and shame. So the next thing that happens then, we've got all of that, and then 2020 hits. And here we are in 2020, and what does that look like? What does that mean? And I don't know if you guys can answer any of that. So if in the chat you want to say, what does 2020 really look like? Anybody? Anyone want to unmute themselves and say, what has 2020 been like?
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute or how to mute. We're never on Zoom. UVU uses Teams, so they're all the same, but they're different. So, for our family, yeah, 2020 has been work-wise completely upside down from anything we've experienced.
Yeah.
All of our classes are now online. There's no one on campus. Basically, we're all working from home. That's totally different. In the family, on a personal basis, it's weird just not seeing people as much. And our family had COVID, and which in itself was just nightmarish. It's horrible. But not being able to receive comfort from the family, being afraid of having to go to the hospital because when you do, you're on your own, you're isolated. All of those fears are different and just enhanced. The fear of actually literally losing. In some cases, people have lost, half their family to this. And we're just not used to dealing with loss of that magnitude. So that's what I'd say. I just think.
Thank you, Tony. Yep, you cut out. Yes, thank you. And I mean, really, you described so many different aspects of what this has looked like for us in 2020. People on the chat are saying isolation. A couple people said chaos, challenging, unending uncertainty, a polar opposite of those things, Zoom with people's faces in squares, mass hysteria, disappointment, and loss. Yeah, I mean, that's really what we've been dealing with. And so, and then 2020 hit and our world completely went upside down. We didn't know. I don't know how many of you guys heard Brene Brown's, oh, I like apocalyptic. That's a good one, Sarah. But Brene Brown, when this all started, she talked on her podcast about FFTs. She calls them effing first times. And that's really what we're in, is an effing first time. And she talks about how these effing first times are really hard because it's so uncertain. We don't know how to navigate it. It's not what we're used to. So when I created the timeline that I looked at for 2020, I looked at March, and I look at the media and how the media goes, and media meaning not the news, but more like commercials and how our marketing is done in our world. And in March, it was like, okay, this is the end of the world as we know it. Yes, cue the REM song, but we're in this together. We can do this. We got this. And that's what the media was talking about. And now by November, and today, December 1st, we're like, this is exhausting. We're super divided. We're scared. We've had our elections. We've got racial tensions going. We got protests. COVID exhaustion is this real thing. And I don't know about you, but when I'm sitting with clients, they're now saying, I'm so tired and I don't know why. And I wake up and I just am still exhausted. And I don't feel like this is normal. What is going on? Why do I feel this way? And I'm thinking, well, we all feel that way. Everybody feels that way right now, but nobody feels they feel that way and that everyone feels that way. But we can't, like Tony pointed out, you go to the hospital and you're like, your family would come with you to the hospital and they'd sit with you and they'd spend the night maybe in the hospital next to you and provide you that comfort, but not now. Not now. My 10-year-old is even saying, Mom, why are all the new fall shows? Why do they keep putting COVID in them? I'm so tired of seeing masks and now they're even on TV. So we're not using our normal rituals of gathering and we're really uncertain. So the person who said unending uncertainty is absolutely accurate. So the Journal of Medicine in June came out and went, ooh, all this social anxiety and the fear of the contagion, like I always feel like COVID is coming to get me. Like this virus is coming. Something is coming for me, and it's nerve-wracking because I'm like, oh, it could be here right now. And it's this invisible thing coming for me. But all of that is impacting us, and it's exacerbating stress-related disorders, suicidality, especially in our vulnerable populations, and individuals with pre-existing psychiatric disorders include not only patients who are treated by mental health professionals, but a large number of people with psychiatric conditions who do not receive psychiatric treatment. So now we're looking at those people who were in therapy and those people who previously were in therapy and those people who've never been in therapy. And that is who's needing assistance right now. So us as providers, we're getting overwhelmed as well. And so they noted that in June. And then the Journal of American Medical Association comes out in October and says, we're going to have a second wave of devastation attributed to mental health consequences of COVID. And this is going to be prolonged grief and major depressive disorder and PTSD symptoms. So all this sounds really promising and hopeful for all of us providers and those working with, in the healing professions or supporting people in schools. And then CDC said, okay, we've had increased substance abuse and excessive media use and more anxiety and more domestic violence and more abuse cases, and caregivers are under stress, and parents are homeschooling and they're overwhelmed by that. And then crisis lines are increasing their calls. And we're having weight gain because we're emotionally eating, because that sounds really appealing, is emotionally eating. We've all put on a little bit of weight and we're in a mental health crisis. So what I want to today, because this is broken up into two presentations today, so we won't get to everything, but we will in our second meeting. But we've talked about Bessel van der Kolk, so let's talk about what the predictors of trauma are. So he says uncertainty and lack of predictability. We've already identified that COVID-19 has uncertainty, lack of predictability. So predictor of trauma 2 is isolation, a loss of connection, a loss of our normal routines. Oh, so COVID-19, we start out with social distancing. So yeah, here we go, isolation. And then another predictor of trauma is loss. And yes, we've identified that we are experiencing loss right now. And some of that loss is real. Some people there's a lot of grief, it's tangible loss. So we've lost people, we've lost pets, we've lost those things, but then we've also had this ambiguous loss. It's the loss that's like unclear, it lacks resolution. So it's that loss of our way of life, the loss of meeting up with friends and family. For Thanksgiving, having loss of those routines and traditions. It's our weddings have changed, funerals have changed. I have a friend and her dad died during COVID in a nursing home. They got to say goodbye to him on the phone, and they normally would have buried him, but they couldn't get him to, buried him in Hawaii. They couldn't get him to Hawaii, so they had to cremate him, and they still haven't been able to go and take his ashes to Hawaii where he can be with their mom. Like, there's so many changes that happen in this time. We don't even feel safe going to the store. And that's ambiguous loss. And some of us feel like, well, that's, our loss of way of life, or Tony, you're not seeing students on campus. That's a loss. It's this sadness that sets in and reminder that things are really uncertain. So the people that we're working with, like as providers, we're a little more knowledgeable about this, but the people we're working with really aren't. And sometimes we have to name that for them, this ambiguous loss. And if we look at our trauma symptoms, it's avoidance, it's re-experiencing the traumatic event, it's a changed attitude about people. I mean, like I feel it myself. I walk somewhere and I'm like, oh, I gotta be careful. I don't want to offend anybody if I'm walking too close to them, or there's like this changed attitude. My aunt won't go to the store and she lives alone, and she has all these health problems, and she's terrified about walking into Costco. And she'll call me and be like, I got to go to Costco now and I need to go. And I'm saying, it's okay. She's like, but there's all these people there. People are so scary now. And so there's this hypervigilance that comes from that. Like, we're just looking around and going, where's this virus coming from? And it's harder to concentrate. So we look at the kids that are in school and they're struggling because they can't concentrate. They don't know, am I going to get quarantined soon? What's going to happen to me? Is my teacher going to get sick and I'm going to get quarantined, or this, or somebody I'm sitting within 6 feet of, they're going to get sick. And so we're having stronger reactions to minor stressors as a result of all of this. This is all trauma symptoms. And so let's define what burnout is too. So burnout is this emotional exhaustion, the fatigue that comes from caring too much for too long. So are we doing that right now? Are we burnt out from this? Like, we're told you have to care all about this. You have to care about each other, wearing your masks, this stuff, right? So yeah, emotionally we're exhausted. And then there's a decreased sense of accomplishment. I don't know how to do all this because I'm in an FFT. Like, I don't know what's going on. This effing first time is really hard. There's nothing I do makes a difference. And then we stop caring about each other. We have this depletion of empathy, and that's the depersonalization. So this is burnout. So think about what you identify with, or what your clients, or what words they might identify with. Is it trauma? Is it burnout? For us as providers, is it compassion fatigue? Is it vicarious traumatization? The stories that we hear. And I was reading an article that was specific to how therapists are dealing with the burnout. And it was talking about how we are doing therapy in home. And so those stories hit closer to home, because we're seriously in our homes doing therapy. So then, is it chronic stress? That's another thing that it could be. So the terminology, is I'm wanting to define so that we understand the words that we can use with our clients that help us explain these things. So stress, we know that stress is the system of changes activated biologically in our brain and our body in response to the stressors and the demands around us. So then we know that cortisol, adrenaline starts pumping through, the hormones prepare the body to take action, right? And then we're in a heightened state of alertness or arousal. And then it's the fight, flight, flee, and freeze. So we have those things that kick in. So the chronic stress is that lower intensity and a longer duration, but it's all of this. So that cortisol is sitting in our bodies for a long time, and that's causing the chronic stress. And Marty said that, yeah, she hears many people saying they're not motivated to do anything anymore, make a difference. Yeah, because we're depersonalized, we're burnt out. And we're under chronic stress, which is fatigue, headaches, difficulty concentrating, which we've already said, some of these are similar to the burnout, the trauma symptoms. So we have difficulty sleeping, our appetites changed, loss of sexual desire, and even frequent infections and illnesses. So we're feeling like we're getting sick, and then we feel like that's COVID, and then we're worried, and then, we have psychological COVID as well. I've never done that, maybe only a few times. So we're sitting trying to manage all of these things, right? We've got chronic stress, burnout, trauma, and then those people that have had trauma have had like either an acute trauma or some sort of trauma within their family, significant traumatic events that have happened. We're all managing all of these they're managing that. We're trying to manage all of this ambiguous loss. And then let's look at us. How many of you guys are problem solvers? Just raise your hand in the little chat or unmute, but who's a problem solver? Lisa's got a hand up. Okay, good. Yeah, we have little chat hands. So Marty, yeah, another Lisa, we've got Tammy, we're problem solvers. So how does this feel to be a problem solver in the midst of uncertainty? I hate it. I don't know about the rest of you, but I am hating it because I don't know how to solve all these problems. Yeah, Tammy, it is. It feels hopeless. And the more accustomed we are to problem solving and to being like the ones that people come to, or the more accustomed we are to providing routine or having predictability or just getting things done, the harder this uncertainty is on us, which is so strange. We're used to problem solving, and that's like one of our coping skills too, I think, is that, I can solve a problem. I'm good at this. I have some confidence around this. I have some competency. Yeah, Tony says, just being able to make it better is gone now. It's very hard. I can't do anything to help patients in facilities because you can't visit them. Oh yeah, that's a hard one. Can't fix anything. We don't know what to expect. Yeah. So as problem solvers, we really have to look at that. We have to look at how we're stifled by this and how we're experiencing it. because that's another ambiguous loss. You know, this has been taken away. We used to have this ability. We used to be able to do it. We used to be able to visit patients in facilities. You know, we've had to stop in facilities. We have to stop visits. I mean, I think about the individuals that are sitting in the hospital and they can't have any visitors and they're so terrified. You know, that feels so helpless. My daughter ended up getting her appendix. She had appendicitis in August. We ended up at the hospital with her, trying to figure out what was wrong. And turns out she has to have emergency surgery. Well, because she's a minor, they let me in onto that floor, but they wouldn't let my husband in. They would only let me in because I went with her. And so the thing is, we're getting creative at this time. So what they did is her room was on the main floor, and they, on the outside windows, they put every room number on so that you could see, and he could come to the window and visit her in the window. So we're trying. So as problem solvers, we do have some ability, but we have to get creative to come up with those kind of things. Tony said the terror of that kept me working to stay out of the hospital during COVID. Yep. Yeah. Because it's terrifying to think you're going to be alone and isolated with strangers who are masked up, who are in shields. I mean, now we're seeing the creativity of our healthcare providers. You know, they're putting their pictures on a necklace so that you can see their faces because they're so covered at this point. But we're also seeing that the world has been really divided. And sometimes I've seen a lot of friends, and we look at like social media now, those original slides we talked about, they're like, we're using that for our connections, and we're canceling each other out, or we're unfriending them because there's not that really in-person feeling. We're not feeding off of each other any longer. And so now we're able to just say, forget that, I don't want, so grandma, you're no use to me anymore. No use, grandma, because you said something that's really just backwards and I just can't handle you anymore. I'm going to cancel you, cut you out of my life. And we've become so close because of that depersonalization that we've identified. Yeah, and somebody else here, Mace and Cheryl Hardy, they're saying lack of human touch for so many people. Yeah, because we can't hug. You're not going to hug because that's too close. And it freaks us out. Everything freaks us out. So we're not touching. We're not, I mean, I remember reading something that said, some article mid-COVID, mid-2020 said, if you're going to have a new sexual partner, wear your masks in your new, I was like, what are we talking about here? Make sure you wear your mask during sex. And I read the whole article, and it was a real article. They were like, so we understand that if this is somebody you've been quarantined, but if this is a new sexual partner, make sure you're wearing masks. I just can't. Like, I don't understand. How is that going to prevent anything, for one? But two, we're getting a little, we're getting very polarized. And when we get polarized, we start getting kind of ridiculous. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So we're amplifying those things. So I read this article, and it's called Your Surge Capacity is Depleted. It's Why You Feel Awful. I highly recommend this article. And I guess it was a couple months ago. I was sitting at my desk at home where I do therapy over Zoom. And this beeping sound happened, this huge beeping, just loud beep. And I look around and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I think my computer's going to blow up. My computer is having burnout or something. Something is happening. But you know, those big plug bars that you're supposed to get to keep from when you have a surge, like an energy surge or your power goes out, it doesn't kill off everything in your computer. So this huge plug bar that's got this big battery on it, that's what was beeping. It was literally dying right there, just like, and then stops, and then everything turns off. I'm like, I didn't even know those things did that. I didn't think they went dead like that. But that's just this metaphor for me was, that's our surge capacity right now. It is gone. My whole plug bar went. That's supposed to be my backup. It's gone. So our surge capacity is really defined as this collection of adaptive systems that are mental and physical that we draw on for short-term survival. So this isn't meant for long-term survival. This is meant for short-term. So this is meant for the hurricane. It's meant for a disaster and an earthquake, right? It's meant for something like that. And we get into that mode. It's that fight, flight, freeze. Get in there and we can use it. The adrenaline is going. And so we can solve that. But this has been such a long-term natural disaster feeling, right? And so we've initially managed the pandemic. We started out like that timeline I pointed out earlier, that we were all in this together. We were ready to support each other. We were coming up with creative things, with parades, with, you know, different creative stuff to do to survive, because we're like, this is only for a couple weeks. Remember, the first message was, we're going to just shut down for 2 weeks. No school in person for 2 weeks. Everybody stay home. So we were like, we can do that for 2 weeks. And it was hard, but we could do it. And now we're like, we're at like 9 months here, 10 months. We are exhausted and depleted. So we need new forms of energy. I had to go get a whole new plug bar. Ran over to Best Buy and said, I need one of these. I carried the big one in and I was like, I need a new one of these. And that's really what we all need, is a new one of these plug things to get more energy, a new form of energy, a new battery backup, new something that's going to help us. And that's what our clients need. And we need as providers. Like, it's really important to acknowledge that we as providers need that. So part of re-energizing is naming what we're feeling and normalizing what we're feeling, put it in perspective, and then reality check our expectations. So we have expectations that life is going to be okay. You know, we have these expectations. Life's going to be safe, and we're going to go to school, and Tony's going to see people walking on campus. And if I get sick, I can go to the hospital and my family can be there. We have all these expectations. So we've lost that. We've got grief. We've got ambiguous loss. We're sad. So let's name it. Let's normalize it. What happens? I don't know how many people have had an emotional breakdown during this 9-10 months period of time. I'll raise my hand. Like, just a day when you're just like, I'm just going to sob. I just need to, like, I don't know what's wrong, but I just can't do this anymore. Connor's got his thumbs up. Yep. Tony said me. Yep. Yeah, Lisa's making the point that after 9/11, church attendance went way up, but after this, that connection's been limited too. So the expectations that we can get together with other people to support each other, that's such a good contrast. After 9/11, what did we do as a country? We came together. We supported one another. But now we're not able to. The way to support each other is to stay away from each other. And you've got people who are angry. You've got people who are, you know, really frustrated by this. And so they're lashing out. And we're turning into political stuff. So again, it comes back down to we have to name it. What are we experiencing? What is this emotion that we are experiencing? How do we say this is normal? How can we be expecting? This is what's funny about us, especially as problem solvers, is, okay, this is the first time I've been through a pandemic. I wasn't alive in the last pandemic. I don't think anyone else was at this point, right? And I wasn't there, so this is all new to me, but I'm expecting that I should be able to handle this really well. I should know how to do this. I should have a good handle on what's going on. But we keep believing something's wrong with us because we can't handle it right now. And so I think it's important to really sit down with our families, with each other when we're getting agitated and annoyed and frustrated with each other, to really understand why. Why are we getting frustrated? Why are we getting annoyed? Because we're tired, because I wake up and I'm still exhausted. So let's put it in perspective. Okay, well, I'm still able to, some kids are still able to go to school. My kids can go to school. It's not, they've been quarantined a few different times, right? There's some uncertainty there. But I look at like California. My nephew in California, he has not been in class once and probably won't be the entire school year is kind of the expectation at this point there. So he's having to reality check those expectations for himself about what's school going to look like this next, you know, when 2021 hits. So let's put it into perspective, see what we have, right? Okay, so we've talked about today the chronic stress, the burnout, the grief, the ambiguous loss, compassion fatigue, trauma, exhaustion that we're all experiencing. And the surge capacity to handle all of those things is depleted. And this crisis it's required us to take better care of ourselves and each other, really. We have to take better care of each other. Yes. So Lisa says, we're also missing sports where we could vent some of our tribal instincts, like heckling the other team. Yeah, we don't have that. We've missed a lot. So we need to identify ways that we can do this differently. And so Michael Mattis, who's also referred to in this article about our surge capacity, he says that our ability to be our best is impacted by 3 domains. And that's our daily and cumulative stress of work in our personal lives. So like that chronic stress from our daily lives, the force of significant external events, so like COVID, and our personal stockpile of skills, abilities, genetics, and family legacy, those stories that we have in our family of how we accomplish things. So today, we're not going to talk about all the skills and strategies. That's for our next meeting, but I wanted to end with a few things that we could do because it felt wrong just not talking about that today, saying all these negative things, right? But he talks about the 2 ways that the brain deals with the world. And that's in the future, so the planning aspect, and then our here and now. So we look at those 2 things, those 2 areas, and saying, okay, we don't have control over this global pandemic, but we have control over our daily lives. And we can identify what's meaningful for ourselves in life, what's good in the here and now. And this really could just be a project in the home. I mean, how many of us heard, I'm going to take up sourdough bread making. I'm going to go through all my closets. I'm going to do all of those things. So that's really was the dopamine that we get from that kind of successful thing is what Michael Mattis is talking about. So our future, so the planning, let's plan, what can we do? Okay, I can change all the batteries and all the smoke detectors in my house. And then I can focus on the here and now and doing that and changing all the batteries in the smoke detectors or all the light bulbs in the house, or go get a new shower head because that sounds great, or order some food and learn how to cook some new dishes really simply, like one of those food order systems, you know, that they send you those boxes and tell you how to make this meal. So it's looking at how do we do something good that provides us some meaning, that solves an immediate problem in the here and now, and really plan for that and then execute it. That helps us problem solvers, but it also helps others. So Tony asked the question, where is that time supposed to come from? I personally don't have a lesser workload or more time off. Working at home doesn't mean working less, at least not for me. How about other people? Because we have about 5 minutes that we can talk about and problem solve a little bit together as well. So how are other people? Are you feeling like you get a bigger workload when you're working from home? Anybody? Okay, well, I know that from my experience, I've worked more from home because worked more at home because there's not like the boundaries of walking out of the building. So we have to set some boundaries for ourselves around that work at home as well. So some of the things that I've talked to people about are putting our workspace somewhere else away so that we can walk away from that workspace. And yeah, and Tony's also saying that things take longer as well. You can't just walk down the hall and get the answers. Yep, working from home, not having outlets for my kids like dance and sports. You're all stuck at home. Yeah. So we have to start expecting a little less from ourselves as well. And that's what I mean, like maybe the success is changing the battery in one smoke detector. And we don't take the same amount of breaks. We don't do the boundary setting. We don't walk away. Because I know if I, even at working at the office, I could stay at the office for hours. Like that wouldn't be hard because there's so much to get done. So when it's at home, it feels like it's right there. And yeah, I'll just keep doing it. I'm at home anyway. I might as well. But we have to start setting boundaries and creating our own personal routines and building this resiliency bank account for ourselves, adding little things in there. Sometimes that is saying no, which fits really well actually with this next slide that I have here. This is our resilience bank account. It didn't slide. There we go. So practicing these little skills can build reserves and create a positive impact on that account. And that can be you're getting adequate sleep, adequate nutrition, some exercise. So the kids can't go to sports and dance and things like that. So we got to figure out how we do that together at home. We might need to dance at home together. We might need to sit and have meditation together. We may need to, our houses are so much bigger. We may need to take that bigger space and say, that's work zone. And let's sit and make this family zone and we're all going to get together. But it is, yeah. And people are saying like humor and looking at the positive, at least we don't have a commute time. You know, I talked to somebody the other day and they're like, I just love it. I can wear sweats on the bottom. I can wear something nice on top and sweats on the bottom. Nobody knows. It's my own personal joy wearing my sweatpants at work. So it's some of those little things that we're getting, but sometimes it is just saying no. Saying no, I can't do more. I have to just take a break. I have to make some time to take some more, and gradually building up our bank account with little small steps. And saying one day, you know what, I didn't work very well. So tomorrow I'm going to have better boundaries. I'm going to have some self-compassion. I'm going to learn to laugh at myself. I'm going to have a big cry. I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to cry about this right now. And then I'm going to walk away and I'm going to put my computer down and I'm just going to walk away. Sometimes that's the best we can do. And it's understanding that. So you problem solvers, which I'm going to guess is a lot of us, not everybody even raised their hand that's a problem solver, would do well to take a break and expect a little bit more. And remember, we live in this perfectionist society, and there's a lot of shame, and a lot of that shame comes from ourselves because we're not perfect. So it's important to start getting realistic. And again, coming back to name it, normalize it, reality check our expectations. If our expectations are perfection, then we're not doing what we need to do right now. We've got to be kind to ourselves. So that's what I'm going to challenge you with today, is to work on self-compassion, being kind, expecting a little less from ourselves, and then recognizing that it's trauma, it's chronic stress, it's burnout, compassion fatigue. We've got all of those things. And so we need to understand that about us. We need to just take it one step at a time. Even the smallest step is a little bit of progress. So thank you guys for coming today. And then we're in, Michael, it's December 16th for part 2. And we'll talk more strategies around what we can do. So even come with questions and get through.
Yeah, we'll just do the second
ahead,
part
Michael.
on the 16th, just like this. Oh, sorry. We'll do it just like this, where we we'll finish off the second half of this. And we did record it also. So if there's people that want to see it that you've talked to, if there's anything you guys need, please feel free to email me. And thanks for attending. Appreciate it. Let us know what other topics you guys want to hear about. We've got Jennifer and a lot of other speakers we want to have jump on here.
For sure.
Thank you. It was good seeing everybody too.
Thanks, guys. Great to connect to everybody.